As some of you may know, alongside the podcast, I also run the How Does She Do It online membership community. And I have to say, it's become one of the things that I am most proud of in my career. It's a small, intimate, subscription-based community for women in business. And at its heart, it's about one thing: making sure that you never have to feel alone in running your business. Because if there's one thing I hear more than anything else, it's that running your own business can be incredibly isolating. The self-doubt, uncertainty, the days when you're not sure if you're doing the right thing, I've been there, and I know that so many of you have too. This membership offers a genuine support network, real women, real conversations, and real help when you need it. There's online networking, monthly guest expert masterclasses, business tools, accountability, support including online co-working, a brilliant WhatsApp community, and an incredible directory too. All in one place, all designed to help you not just survive in business, but truly thrive. This community is growing all of the time, and the energy within it honestly blows my mind on a regular basis. I'm watching women grow in confidence, push through their comfort zones, and build connections that genuinely change the way they feel about their businesses and themselves. If any of this resonates with you, and if you've been listening to this podcast thinking I could really do with a community like that, then I would absolutely love for you to come and find out more. You can find all the details in the show notes, and if you'd like to have a chat with me before you take the plunge, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Warmly welcoming you to How Does She Do It, the podcast, with me, your host, Jo Ferroni. Join me on my journey as I explore finding a gentle balance in both business and life, because being kind to ourselves is our superpower. In today's episode, I sit down with Laura Uglow, mother, author, breathwork facilitator, and soul guide healer, to talk about the winding road that led her into more than 2 decades of supporting women through health, wellness, and eventually deep inner work. Laura traces how her practice evolved from the physical into something far more holistic, after noticing that the women she worked with were carrying far more than tired muscles. They were exhausted from holding everything together for everyone else. That realization, paired with her own experience of grief, burnout, and anxiety, set her on the path to breathwork, angelic Reiki, meditation, somatic practice, and ultimately to writing. We quite rightly spent a good chunk of the conversation on her new book, Soul Freedom, and the Liberated Woman Method that underpins it. Laura even reads 2 pieces from the book live on the episode, and there's something genuinely moving about hearing them in her own voice. Perhaps my biggest takeaway is Laura's resolve that softness is not weakness, that choosing yourself, slowing down, and trusting your own timing is its own kind of quiet power. And if you've ever felt guilty for putting yourself first, this episode is well worth your time. Enjoy the show. Laura Uglow, it is so gorgeous to have you on my screen today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so happy to be here as well. So thank you for having me and for the invite as well.
We've been talking about having this conversation for the podcast for quite a long time now. And just before we hit record, we were saying that actually now feels like the right and the aligned time. Isn't it funny how that happens? We've been, planning it, and life has been busy. Work has been busy. Some of us here have been publishing books, and we'll come on to that in a moment as well. But today feels like the right day, and I couldn't be more excited to have this conversation, because we've often had chats and then almost commented that it would be really good to share those chats with people far and wide because of some of the things that we cover. So today we actually get to do that. So before we dive too deeply in, I would absolutely love for you to share with my listener what came before starting the business that you run now.
So now really, I'm a mother. I am a writer, author, and a breathwork facilitator and a soul guide, healer. And ultimately, what led me to this journey is kind of many things in my personal life and through my work, but pre what I do now, I went to university. I studied politics and social policy. It was a very different life in a way. I grew up in a very loving family and it was quite different. My dad was a journalist and, I knew that I always wanted to write, but I guess what I wanted to write, at that point, it hadn't landed. So I kind of, went the academic route and had a great time at university in the process, made some wonderful friends. And I guess in the back of my mind, my dad being a journalist, firstly, that was an inspiration for me. For as young as since I was 5, I'd always said I wanted to write. It's in all of my school books. But he loved his job. And I think if there's one thing I took away from that time is just that I wanted to do and love my job in the way that he did. But after university, I ended up on a path of like moving into a PR and advertising. And again, I had a good time, but I didn't feel fulfilled. And I just knew that there was something more out there for me. I guess whilst in the back of my head, having, my dad as inspiration to kind of follow what you love and to really kind of connect with what it is that lights you up. So, very brief summary of what happened before.
Thank you. How interesting. I absolutely love how much of an inspiration your dad was, and the fact that from such a young age you knew you wanted to write. I had no idea that that was what you studied at university, so that's brilliant to hear. My goodness, what an education. That's amazing and yet so different as well. And I'm sure that it helped to build a foundation in your life because it would have been a big part of your life in your late teens. So, you now have supported sensitive women for over 23 years. That's absolutely incredible, and you certainly don't look old enough. Can you I mean it. Can you share with us how you ended up coming to this incredible profession, and also explain to us how you work with women, because I know you have a number of offerings that I'd really love you to speak to today.
Okay, so yeah, again, it's been quite a long journey, and I think the one thing that really comes up for me around this question is that my work really has evolved and grown and developed along with me, and so I've been in health and wellness, I'd say probably for nearly 25 years in one shape or form. And it's never completely changed, but it's evolved as my journey's evolved, as I've gone through things and moved through things. It's kind of inspired me to go a little bit deeper, and then I've brought that into my work. So I would say now, like, my work really does incorporate the whole mind, body, soul approach. But really it began, so as I said before, I kind of went to university. I went and worked in PR and advertising, and it was great. There was no problem with that. It just wasn't for me, being sat in front of a desk. And I was just getting more and more interested in fitness and nutrition. And actually, with my boyfriend at the time, we went to America. I think after university, I didn't necessarily go traveling, but we went and lived there for a while. And I lived in Austin in Texas, and they are all health nuts over there. So I kind of got the bug. And when I came back, I kind of continued with sort of my PR work. And then just remember going to the gym a lot. And there was a guy there who kind of inspired me. He was working freelance as a personal trainer. And as is often the case with me, I suddenly decide to do something and then everything changes around that. So I decided to leave my job. I was in my 20s at the time. Obviously, I was more free to do that. And I retrained as a nutritionist and a personal trainer. About a year after that, I trained in Pilates. But it was an incredible time just working with so many women, to help them, I guess, reclaim their energy, work on their body, to kind of begin that process of taking care of themselves. And it was wonderful. It was how I was living my life at the time, really kind of learning more about the body. How can we move to help our well-being? How can we eat to help our well-being? And it's a huge part of my life still now in different ways. But on my journey, but also with these women, I realized that we hold so much as women. So there was women at different stages of motherhood that I was working with. They were all holding and carrying so much. They were carrying the responsibility of work, the responsibility of their family, the responsibility of holding themselves together, keeping it together, keeping up with the rest of the world, and they weren't alone with that. I was often feeling it at times as well. And so, I really began to learn that, there is so much going on within the world and that can make it difficult to, I guess, take care of our heart and our emotional well-being and our physical well-being as well. And I guess as women, we're often constantly pouring into everyone else and filling them up with love. And I think we said this before we started speaking, but there's guilt and shame around taking care of ourselves. But actually, our body, it's our home, isn't it? And it's our vessel. So, it's so important that we feel good. And when we feel good, not only can we connect with things that we want to do in our life, but we can also hold our work, our family, our children, our parents, our friends with the energy and the love that we want to show up with. And I think when we're pouring into everyone else, ultimately what we're doing is we're just, really abandoning ourselves and leaving ourselves behind in that. And I really began to learn that, you're important too. I'm important too. We are all important, our feelings, our needs, but not just that, our dreams and desires, they all matter as well. And I think those were kind of getting left behind. So there was that. And then obviously we go through a lot of challenges in our life. And I think ultimately where I got to was that it's incredible to look after our physical body and to look well, but it doesn't change how we feel emotionally from the inside out. It doesn't help us change our behaviors or our patterns that are maybe contributing to anxiety or burnout. And it isn't about fixing ourselves. It's about just getting to know ourselves, staying with ourselves, not abandoning ourselves, and just saying that, yes, I am important too. So it really kind of, my journey began to bring me to the inner work. And especially as I went through some difficult times in my own life with burnout, grief, a lot of anxiety through the experiences that I was going through. And, I think what I really learned is that if I want to be okay for myself and if I want to be okay for everyone else, I need to work on my inner self. And so I began that part of my journey. I just remember waking up one day and just saying, I just don't want to feel like this anymore. I feel anxious. I feel I'm grieving. I feel lost. I don't know where I'm heading. And from that day, kind of, step by step, I began to shift things. I learned about breathwork, but I also trained in breathwork. I did Angelic Reiki and trained in Angelic Reiki. I learned about meditation and did courses in that. Same with somatic experiencing. And as I went through my journey and learned more about myself, I was able to incorporate more of that into my work to give women this kind of whole body, heart, spirit, and soul approach, and to help them learn how to love and hold themselves as well, because they are worthy of that.
My goodness. I've got so much I'd love to unpack from what you've just shared. Thank you for sharing it so so beautifully. And your journey, your evolution is nothing short of inspirational. And I absolutely love that, first of all, in your 20s, you chose or you recognized that your career, your roles weren't necessarily what your heart was desiring. And although you pointed out it was easier then, less responsibilities in our 20s, I guess that's what you were alluding to. It's also, I think, a very brave move to have made in your 20s, because I think that societal conditioning helped us to essentially grow up feeling there was one way of doing things, one size fits all. And, you know, leaving a career job is not necessarily the norm. You know, you stick with it. But you clearly had something within you that was speaking louder than that societal conditioning. And I really, really respect that, to hear of a 20-something-year-old making that brave and big move, actually, and then to go on and start training at such a young age as well, in nutrition, and then the personal training, and then everything else that has come. Something else that really stood out to me was your lived experience. You've got all of this training, you've done the courses, you have experienced the modalities of those courses as well, and I know that they mean so much to you. But what I think really stands out for people that are perhaps hearing you today, people who are potential clients, is that you're not just reciting things you've learned. You have been through it. You have been on a journey. The Laura that people come and have a class led by is not someone who's going, I've got it all sorted. Life's always been a dream. And that's why I'm going to make you breathe and chill and sort your life out. That's not how it is. And I feel that the way that you work absolutely echoes all that you've been through, all that you have learned and experienced. And that is really felt as a client. You know, I have been in your classes, hearing you speak as well. I can just feel that depth of energy, experience, emotion. And I really feel that that is something that is beautifully unique in this modern day. That's a very long response to what you just shared, but I hope it makes sense.
Completely makes sense. And I really value the way you've just kind of expressed that, because everything I do and everything I share really, really does come from the heart. And I guess even recognizing in my 20s when I made that choice, because I think everyone thought I'd gone mad at the time, but there was just something in me which just said, you have to do this, Laura. And just always felt that, you know, if we feel something like that, that is the gold within us. That's speaking to us and saying there is something more. So yeah, that, I mean, it was a beautiful move, and it took me on the journey that, what was the beginning of the journey that I was obviously meant to be on. But yeah, everything I share, everything I've learned, I live it first. And I think one of the things, I was thinking about this before we spoke, is that, and I often say this, but through all the things I've been through, I never gave up. I always just felt inspired to take the next step. What can I learn from this? Even through really difficult, painful times, which there has been many, it's kind of, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And kind of, you know, and I guess there's just this drive, the same as that 20, 5-year-old me who wanted to leave and become a personal trainer. There's that drive in me now that just knows this is why I'm here, is to share this work, to let women know that they're not alone in how they feel, that, you know, there's a lot of us that carry a lot by ourselves. And I think kind of opening up to that and being seen in that and being vulnerable and kind of being in our softness is very, very very powerful. I mean, even down to the readings in my book, everything is a lived, embodied experience. So, and my pillars in my method, the Liberated Woman Method, which we'll talk about later. But it's a lived journey. It's been 8 years, 10 years in the making. It's not something that I quickly have put together. It's a journey, and it works, because if there's one thing I know, there's no quick fixes, but we can make lasting changes to the way that we live that feels good from the inside out in our soul.
Gorgeous. And you've alluded to the grief and huge struggles that you've been through in your life, and they really absolutely highlight what amazing work this is, because it is a journey that you're on. Anyone that has experienced grief or anxiety or anything, let's be honest, but grief is the big one. To be able to see you and how you have been able to continue walking this path is certainly going to give people a lot of hope. And I see you as a real beacon of light here today, sharing that with my listener. Now, for anyone who follows me on Instagram, they'll be able to look back at a post I shared a few weeks back when I was absolutely delighted to have been invited to your beautiful book launch. Now, you mentioned the book just now, and it's absolutely something that I want us to shout about today. The book launch was just the most special and unique event. I really, really loved it. It was the most nurturing and nourishing, truly inspiring event, and to have you there speaking and sharing from your book was really, really special. And just recently, I mean, I've finished the book. I love the book, and I now continue to come back to it and delve in every now and then, but I could not put it down. It was the most gorgeous, beautiful read. I felt like it really held me as I read it. I felt nurtured like I did at your book launch, and it almost gave me that permission and space to breathe and to feel and to go inwards, like you speak about. So, recently at one of my online networking events, I was drawn to your book, and I read one of the readings from it, and I would absolutely love for you to share that one with us right now, which was called The Garden of Your Heart.
Okay, wonderful. I'll just pull it up. Oh, okay, so The Garden of Your Heart. Come and join me for a moment and visualize your heart as a garden. When you water this garden with love, compassion, and kindness, it blooms and grows in the most wonderful of ways. Everything within you comes back to life, the colors, the beauty, the joy, the magic, all of it. But when you race through life and you lose that connection with your heart and you forget to water it, the beauty, the colors, and the flowers in your garden lose their life force and their magic. You lose connection with your heart space and the light within you. All the love in your heart needs nourishment, kindness, and compassion to bring all of that love, magic, and your heart's desires into the external world. So water the garden in your heart. Fill your cup. Take care of you. Bring yourself and the garden of your heart back to life. Tend to the gateway of your soul, because it's the place where the light enters and shines.
Thank you so much. I had my eyes closed and was just visualizing from the words that you shared. That was gorgeous. I've said gorgeous quite a few times today, but that is the word. Tell us a little bit about the book. For a start, it's called Soul Freedom, and what led you to writing it?
I mean, where I'll start is, for me, soul freedom really feels like a gift from my heart to the world. Even when I read a reading there, I can feel what I was feeling at the time and the importance of that message that I'm sending out or transmitting muting into the world. But ultimately, freedom is a woman who is ready to come home to herself and really, I guess, to discover that her softness is her power. And I will kind of come into that a bit so it begins to make more sense. But I guess the truth is that soul freedom was born from my own journey, as I've sort of spoken about. And this journey wasn't linear, and it certainly wasn't easy. It was shaped by grief, anxiety, and burnout. And, I guess by moments in my life which brought me to a point where, like I'd said earlier, I just couldn't keep going and living the way that I was. But the beauty of that moment when I felt that this is, I can't carry on like that. This is when I began to choose myself. And this is the moment where I said, right, from this time, life is going to be different. I'm going to choose me. And it wasn't just I need to fit this in. How can I schedule it? It is properly choosing me and saying no to things, saying yes to what matters, just taking the time I needed, asking for help, like meditating, breathing, like really truly meeting myself with kindness, love, and compassion, and saying, even though it feels hard right now, I love myself as I am, and I'm going to just meet myself. Even if I can't love myself where I am, I'm just going to meet myself here in this moment and say it's okay to feel the way that I do. And, as I said before, I was exploring lots of different modalities, and I guess some of these modalities, they met me deeply, and some of them didn't quite provide me what I needed. But, I started to notice patterns in the women I now work with, kind of a sense of searching, seeking, but not feeling fully met. And I found my own path in all of that. And so in choosing me, I would say that, yes, that's the moment my life began to change. But also because I started tuning into myself, I began meditating. You can call that stillness, listening to your heart, slowing down, but ultimately it's creating a connection with ourselves. And, breath work, somatic work. And I really began to listen to myself. But through that, I really discovered this gift of writing. And it was incredible because, like I said, I'd always wanted to write. I'd wanted to write a book. And then suddenly I would do a meditation and then come round and the words would be there. And I was like, right, I just have to capture this down. And I began writing, and some of it I would share. But it was snippets, like short pieces of healing, which maybe reflected how I felt that day, or maybe reflected something that I need, or reflected something about the world, or and so these pieces of writing over the last sort of 8, 9, 10 years sort of started to come together. And I'd love to say it was super organized, but lots of them were written in notes on my phone, lots of them were scattered in notebooks in various different places. But overall, I guess what I started doing when I chose myself and practicing, the healing and spiritual practices that I do now, it was I was following my intuition. And I guess what unfolded in that was a way of healing, which it didn't rush me. I didn't feel this need. It allowed me to move at my own pace. I didn't feel that I needed to fix myself or that I was broken in some way. It was just learning to live as me from my soul, which was one of the most healing things that I could have gifted myself in that moment. I wasn't trying to keep up with what the world told me that I should do, or how I should act, or what I should be saying yes to or no to. I started listening to, who am I? What do I love? What lights me up? And like I said, it was healing, empowerment, living from the soul. And that really is what soul freedom is. It's a journey of healing, of feeling more empowered and just coming back to the soul. And it's a collection of intuitive readings. Some are short, some are half a page, some are a page, some are 2 pages. But ultimately, they're there to support women to heal, soften, and really just to step into their true power. And our power, when I say that, it doesn't have to be loud, or
No.
our power can often feel soft. It's intuitive. It's knowing that we have the power to choose in our life, that we can create a life that feels good. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It can feel good within. our soul. And I guess ultimately for over a decade now, through that journey, I've been writing. Writing has been incredibly healing for me. I also shared, over the years, many readings at my breathwork sessions and healing workshops, and therein lies that's how the book came together. I never knew how it was going to come together, or even if it did. I just followed my intuition. And then last summer, I was like, right, which of the many books I've got on the go am I going to begin with? And that was the one. And I spent probably about 11 months compiling and putting it into the order that it is, and the healing journey that it is. It's a specific path based around my Liberated Woman Method. It's an offering from my heart to the world, and I guess very much steeped in my lived experience, but also, I guess, wisdom that I've gained along the way. So
Most definitely wisdom that you've gained along the way as well. I believe that what you're sharing today is really going to pique women's interest actually in just trusting and going inward and really taking time to listen. And as you've said, it's not a quick fix. So that's not what we're trying to promote here in any way. We don't want someone to think that they can just flick a switch and everything will be sorted. And actually, how brilliant that that isn't the case, because I believe that we need to go on this journey. We need to take time to delve and to really recognize what our heart and soul is sharing with us. So would you give us a brief understanding of the Liberated Woman Method?
yeah, so the Liberated Woman Method has been something, well, it is my own, I guess, unique methodology. And to give the practical facts first, it is an 8-pillar offering program, which is a journey back to yourself, a journey back to the heart and the soul. And my belief is that all healing begins with self-love. Self-love often looks very different to how we imagine. As I said before, it's just so often meeting ourselves with compassion and saying, I'm here for you, I've got your back. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. And just meeting yourself in the same way that you would a good friend. So the Liberated Woman Method begins exactly there. Pillar 1 is self-love. And then as we move through self-love and we learn to hold ourselves with that love and compassion, we begin to feel more safe within ourselves as well. And, I often describe this. If you think about a baby, if they're loved, if their needs are met, if their experiences are validated through their life, they feel that love, they feel safe. And it's no different for a baby than it is for us as a grown adult and human who also feels deeply as well. And so pillar 2 is feeling safe. And we go through the pillars, which it's kind of I often call them like a spiral of pillars as well, really. And then we move on to self-love, ending with true soul freedom and liberation, I guess, from the beliefs that hold us back, from the emotions that weigh heavy in our heart. And it doesn't mean we forget, but it means that we can live from our soul more free, without saying, who am I to do that? Why should I be able to fulfill my dreams? Or just the beliefs, the stories, the doubts that hold us back each day. And I guess ultimately the Liberated Woman Method is a pathway back for yourself. It's much more than a program or a framework. I've been developing it for 8 years, and even at the end of last year, I went deep into my own healing again to really embody each pillar and to bring through the practices that sit within that pillar. So each pillar has a different energy. Each pillar has a different somatic breathwork or healing practice that sits within it. Each pillar has readings from my book. So it has its own energy. And I guess, the truth is we're living in a world that constantly pulls us in different directions. It's loud, it's busy, Many of us feel emotionally overwhelmed if we're not creating that time for ourselves. Burnout is on the rise, anxiety, and what I see again and again is with my, often in my own journey and with the women I work with, is that we slowly begin to abandon ourselves, as I said, our needs, our truth, our desires, and we begin living on kind of, I guess, autopilot, disconnected from who we really are. And the liberated woman is born from that awareness that each pillar brings us back to ourselves and the truth of who we are. It's a path to help release the noise of the world and to return to yourself in a grounded, sustainable way as well. I like to think of it more as a way of living. Women who really want to live. The pillars are something we can always kind of return back to. They're not rigid, they're more like a spiral. If I was going through a difficult time in my life, I would cycle back to pillar 1. How can I meet myself where I am now with compassion to move through that? It's something we return to again and again, and practices we can return to depending on how we feel. But it's a different way of being in the world. It's a softer way, but it's an empowering way. It's a way that teaches us our softness is our strength, and we don't necessarily have to conform to what the rest of the world says, because all our paths are different, all our paths are valid. And I think ultimately it teaches us, and this path of the liberated woman teaches us to, or teaches you to step into the woman that you were always meant to be. Not someone new, not someone different, but it helps us remember the truth of who we are underneath the noise of life. I don't know if I've explained that very well. It's quite complex, but
It is complex, but I think you have explained it really well, and I love that there is that structure, which also has flex in it as well. Like you say, people can go back. It gives people something to work through. And I think that that is a really appealing offering, especially in a world of busyness and external noise and tension and all of the things that we experience. So thank you so much for sharing that. I would love for us to almost do a bit of a quick fire through the areas that you have offered to share a little bit more on today. Now, I would love us to start actually. We were going to start with softness being your greatest power, but I feel like we've covered that already. I think that was really wonderfully explained. So I'd love to go on to the sacred art of choosing yourself. I love that this isn't the selfish act of choosing yourself, because in my community, I know that a lot of women have a bit of resistance around choosing themselves for fear of seeming selfish and, not caring about everyone else. But this really isn't the case, is it?
no, I mean, I love this question, and I love that you've brought this up because, ultimately we are all worthy of love. There isn't one person who isn't worthy of love, and we're worthy of love simply because we are here, because we exist now, because we matter. Every person matters, every person's needs matters, everyone's feelings matter, and that's what we're always coming back to. And I think when we call it the sacred art of choosing ourselves, we're rewriting the narrative in a way, and we're saying that actually it's safe for me to choose myself. It's my birthright to choose myself too. And it doesn't mean that it's selfish, because it's giving us the power to, I can show up in a way that I never was able to show up before because I choose myself. And so it is a sacred art. And it is, when you look at the Eastern world, people meditate, they breathe. It's a way of living. And that's ultimately what the Liberated Woman Method is. It's a way of living. It's like, how can we incorporate these practices into our day so that we can become free from who we've begun to believe we are, and it is my greatest belief that these practices should be available for everyone because of the way it connects us to our own health and our well-being, the way it improves our emotional well-being, the way it improves our physical well-being. If we're not choosing ourselves and we're running on survival mode all of the time, then that impacts our physical body. It increases cortisol, it increases inflammation in the body, we end up with more pain, it increases hormonal imbalance. There is just such a huge repercussion of this, and this is why I'm so passionate about the work I do, because I see the results in myself, but I also see it in others as well. And actually, there is, just thinking, there is one reading which I'd love to read around, if that's okay. It's called Choose You. If you want more energy, if you want to feel good from the inside out, if you want deep, meaningful love, true connection, and soul-led friendships, if you want clarity and purpose in your life, if you want to trust your intuition and listen to it daily, if you want to know what lights you up and brings you joy, if you want to find the courage to follow your path and the strength to create your own version of happiness, if you want to feel comfortable in your skin, if you want to be your own best friend, if you want to create a life you love, learn to love yourself first, fully and completely. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Doesn't have to be complex, but you do have to make a choice. You have to put your hands on your heart and say, today I choose me too. Because once you learn the true meaning of self-love, everything else begins to fall into place. Life flows more freely. You begin to embrace the good, the bad, the light, and the dark. You come home to yourself. If you choose to do one thing for yourself today, tomorrow, and every day, choose you. Because you are important. You matter. Your needs, dreams, and desires are important too. And it all begins with self-love. So that was Choose You from Soul Freedom. And I just feel that it really speaks to what we receive when we choose ourselves. And love is to be given and to be received. And we don't expect to be receive, but love is an energy. It's meant to flow equally between all beings and all things. We can't just give without receiving, because if we don't receive love too, then we feel depleted, we feel anxious and burnt out. And that's why burnout is so on the rise, because of this self-love is selfish, that we must keep pushing on through. And the truth is, we don't have to. We can choose to soften, we can choose to be vulnerable. And actually, when we do that, it's the doorway to our intuition, our flow, our nourishment, our power, our purpose, and our soul, and just so much goodness and the life that we desire. That's ultimately where it leads. And of course, it takes time, as with all of these things. But as we've said, the beauty of this is there's no rush. We've got a lifetime to get to know ourselves, haven't we?
I'd love to talk to the power of the inner voice. This is a really big one for me at the moment, as I've been doing some speaking gigs around imposter syndrome, self-doubt, mindset, and inner voice is most definitely an area that when I cover it and speak to it, the nods around the room are from a large percentage of the audience, and I am the first to admit that my inner voice is not the most positive at times, but I'm definitely working on it. Can you talk to us about how we can encourage a quietening of that inner voice?
A quietening of that inner voice. It's a big subject, and obviously it is a learning and it's a journey. And I think the piece I want to speak to first is that as we move through our life, and especially as you're stepping into something new, more speaking gigs, there's almost another layer to unravel. So it would be completely natural that would be coming up now. But I think ultimately, our self-doubt, our inner critic, the voice within us that says we're not enough, it begins it begins with acceptance, but before we accept ourselves, that again is a journey. It comes back to creating a foundation of love and safety in the body, which is pillar 1 and 2 of the Liberated Woman Method. It's like tuning into, the way I work somatically and with the breath is firstly to come back to ourselves, to inquire about that belief, this is how I'm feeling, and to really give it light, bring it to the surface. I don't feel good enough right now because of this reason. And then we can work with that, and we can soften it. And when, I think we spend a lot of time holding these voices within ourselves, and the answer often is to bring it to the light, either through our own practices or our own self-inquiry, or through, speaking to someone or coming to a breathwork class. And ultimately, when we do that, and when we hold ourselves through with the breath or with somatic practices, we're coming back to safety. And we remind ourselves that actually, right here now, I'm in my body. I am enough. What I'm doing is enough. But also, I'm learning and growing on this journey. But, ultimately, it is a work in progress. And the more we tune into our inner world, the more we tune into our intuition, the quieter that inner voice becomes. But I think the first thing is removing the resistance around that it's maybe wrong to be feeling that way, or we should be further ahead.
I think that's really, really interesting. And I guess that the way that I, over the years, have overcome my more critical inner voice
Mm.
is to just try and dial it down a little bit and remind myself that actually the fear, if you like, is not necessarily a fact. It's just something that my mind is telling me. But also then to try and replace the critical inner voice with one of encouragement and, I guess, affirmation. And I think that that ties in really well with breath work as well. We can affirm to ourselves whilst also giving that physical experience to our body with our controlled breath work, and that really imprints it, I think. And so that's a way that I have worked towards quietening the critical inner voice and allowing myself to bring in a more positive and supportive inner voice. Now, I think we've covered a lot of your story and your background, which proves that, you've done an awful lot of work. But I also think it can be very easy for someone listening in, or, looking at your website or what have you, to assume that someone like yourself has it completely all sorted because you got all the tools in your toolkit. But I know for sure that life isn't always a breeze, and it certainly hasn't been in the past as well. And you've shared that with us today. I would love for you, with all of the wisdom and expertise that you have, to share 3 things that a listener tuning in today could perhaps start with, in terms of, perhaps there are things that you do in your daily life that it's a non-negotiable and that helps you to get through your day.
So the first thing that I want to share is that literally just the simple act of, when we feel overwhelmed, to just stop for a moment, place left hand on heart, right hand on belly, and take 3 long, slow, deep breaths into the belly. And it's really important that the belly rises when we do that, because then we activate the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, which is our rest and digest. So if we are switched on, if we're in survival mode, fight, flight, then that automatically switches us back down into parasympathetic. It slows our heart rate, it calms our hormone balance, it brings us back to ourself and back to the present moment. So yeah, left hand on heart, right hand on belly. Feel the belly rise as you inhale through the nose, and then just exhale through the mouth and just let it go. And you can do that as many times, I call it it's calling it space. So as many times as you need to through the day, you can just come back to yourself in a really simple, accessible way.
Thank you.
Number 2 is just to create 5 minutes. I mean, obviously it can be more every day for stillness. And that stillness might be a meditation. It might be to take some deep breaths. It might be with no phone, no distractions, and just looking at things around the garden. But just to take those 5 minutes, it doesn't really matter what time of day. Often I find it works better for me and clients to have a set time of day. Some people do it morning and night, some just morning, some just nighttime. My morning practice has been in place for years now, and it is every morning the first thing I do is get up and choose myself. And sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's an hour. It very much depends. Got 3 kids as well, so we do the best we can with what we have. So that's number 2. And I think the third one, to make it super accessible, would be just to take your shoes off and just stand on the earth. And you could do the deep breaths into your belly, but also just spend 1 or 2 minutes with your feet on the earth, just looking around in the garden. Look at the birds, look at the sky, look at the trees, and just take a moment to notice. And you'll be surprised what you notice when you look. There might be a bird you notice, there might be something that comes up, you might notice a glimmer that kind of gives you hope and light for the rest of the day ahead. So those would be the first 3 that I would say, and that have been pivotal for me. I mean, even the last 3 or 4 weeks, there's been a lot going on at home, and every morning I make it that space to just step outside, do my practices for however long I have, and it means that I go back into the house as the mum I want to be to my kids. I can feel grounded and centered and offer them what they need. And I've also been able to, do the same for my husband as well, and myself through that process. So, hands down, those were the 3 things that kind of came up and that I really live by.
We've covered so much, Laura, and I would love to round off our conversation today with my last 3 questions before asking you where we can find you online. So, what is the toughest thing for you about working for yourself?
Having to do all of it alone, which brings back to the question of how does she do it? And I think what I've really learned is that one of the most powerful lessons I've learned is I can't do it all, and I let myself off the hook, and I do what I can that day. And sometimes I have to wait a week to do something that really lights me up in my work, and I'm okay with that now. I never used to be, but sometimes in the hard lessons that we learn, the most powerful ones, isn't it? So
Yeah, thank you for your honesty there. I think that's really interesting because I would assume that, you wouldn't feel that frustration ever, because of the work that you do. But how wonderful that you've come to find a way of trusting that, you will get to the juicy bit when the time comes. And yeah, as far as doing it all ourselves is concerned, you are not the first person to answer like that. And I think that's really comforting, actually, to know. We need to remind ourselves that it's not just us, it is really hard. So what's the best thing about working for yourself?
the best thing is that I just have a free rein to follow my intuition and what lights me up as well. So that far outweighs the rest. I guess, I am incredibly intuitive and I do have visions and I see things very clearly. And I think I would feel, or when I can't do that, I feel quite trapped. And for me, the fact that I can choose to write a book, that I mean, it hasn't come easy, this path. It's come through a lot of inner healing and a lot of creating this for myself and choosing myself each day. But I love that I have freedom, the soul freedom to choose the path. And I think that's what helps when sometimes it feels like a lot in my business, because yes, I do have the freedom. I can follow what feels good and what I love, and know that it's supporting and helping other women in that process. And I think I've learned to be okay if, like, the book took many years to write and put together, and I was okay with that. Things do take time. I used to want it all now, and I think actually the universe does have its own divine timing. And I think for me, learning to trust my body, trust the universe, trust my path, and that what is meant for me won't pass me by, but also that my soul does know the way, is that it helps to bring that balance. It's a constant learning with your
Con-
business, isn't it? Learning to step into yourself and feeling that fear, and what do I need to unravel that to be able to speak my truth more clearly, as you've explained already and so beautifully. So, yeah, you're amazing.
Bless you. Thank you. It's a lot. It's such a lot. And that's why I feel so passionately about sharing women's experiences and stories. We need to be hearing these conversations, and not just the shiny end result type life is wonderful, because that is not what's going to be relatable for people, because so many of us are in the messy middle. So to hear of people's stories and journeys and struggles, as well as the positive stuff, I believe is really important. And so the last question to ask you today, as you know, the name of my business is How Does She Do It? Because I don't believe that she does do it all at the same time. Can you tell me one thing that either you do or perhaps don't do anymore to ensure that you remain on track, healthy, and happy in your life?
I mean, I've got one of each. I'll start with what I guess I don't anymore say yes to things which I don't feel aligned with, or
Hmm.
that maybe steal my energy, or that don't feel good, because that takes my time away from the things that really matter. And that's what's created space for me to be able to write a book and to create the offerings that I share with so many women. And then the one thing I do is take care of my body, my heart, and my soul daily. And I don't do all of it every day. This morning, I did some gentle Pilates movement, stretching, and then a little bit of meditation. Sometimes it's a 5 minute, some deep breath. And, I think because I guess, been on the path for a long time, I can tune into what I need and choose what I need that day, and know that I don't have to do all of it. I can just pick and choose what my body needs depending on how I feel. So, but that's come through time. That hasn't come easy to be able to tune into that. So,
Well done. It sounds like you're kind to yourself, and that is an important message for people to hear as well. I would love for you to tell people where they can find you, and also where they can buy your book as well, because I'm sure their interest will be piqued from today.
so my book Soul Freedom is available on Amazon. I'll share the link with
Yeah,
you.
we'll
I
pop.
guess that's a doorway into my world of work and offerings, and it's a really nice place to begin. And then after that, I have my monthly membership, which is online. It's called the Heart Space. And I think probably there's a real theme today which has come through, which is choosing ourselves, having practices which support and guide us to choose ourselves. And that's really what the Heart Space is. It's an online platform where you choose, which will support you on your journey to choose yourself and to tune into your intuition daily. So, yes, it's meditation, breath work, but it is also a space where you can connect with how you feel, what you need, your dreams, and your intuition. So there's live classes on Zoom every week, breathwork and meditation, and monthly heart circles and breathing sessions. All of those, plus others, are recorded and uploaded to the membership. We've got a morning devotion, meditation section, which has got thank you, universe, thank you, body, different ways of connecting to what we need that day. So if you're sat here right now thinking, I don't know how I feel or what I need, then that would be the place for you to begin. You can log on, go to a meditation and tune into the energy of like a meditation which is called I take care of myself, I choose me today, or I choose gratitude, whatever. You don't have to, it takes away the thinking, so you can just begin to learn how to take care of yourself. And again, that's on my website alongside other kind of one-to-one and event kind of offerings, and obviously the Liberated Woman Method as well, which is woven through everything that I do.
I will pop links in the show notes to all that you have mentioned. And all that remains for me to say now is thank you so much. Thank you for bringing so much to the podcast today of your words, but your wisdom, your heart and your soul and your energy as well. I felt your energy fizz through me a number of times throughout this interview, and you just bring the lightest and most beautiful energy, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jo. And I also want to say thank you so much to you as well. You always bring such a big, gorgeous, open heart to everything you do, and you're just an incredibly supportive and generous hearted and just beautiful soul. Yeah. And I know we've had many conversations about our writing and our work, and I feel good things are coming for you, and I feel that your path is unfolding also as it's meant to. So yeah, keep taking those steps and keep moving forward. You're amazing.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, I'd love you to take a moment to share and subscribe too. Come and join me over at How Does She Do It Life on both Facebook and Instagram. And until we speak again, I wish you a wonderful week ahead.